My novel, Consider the Sunflowers, which was published by Borealis Press of Ottawa, is about a young woman who lives in Vancouver. The story takes place in the 1940s, and she is a Mennonite. She's having quite a good life there, but she misses her boyfriend back in Saskatchewan. He lives in their Mennonite community in Saskatchewan. He is a half gypsy, which is a cross-cultural marriage that doesn't go down with the Mennonites very well. But anyway, she goes back and marries him, and then they have quite a bit of adjustment to do. There is racism to contend with. Also, there are difference in faith. She is a fairly convinced Mennonite, he's an agnostic. And then there is the rural-urban conflict as well. The title, Consider the Sunflowers, this book that was published by Borealis Press of Ottawa, came from my own experience. My husband and I lived in Toronto for many years. Then we moved to Kamloops, British Columbia in 2006. And I love the sunflowers that grow in the gardens here in sunny Kamloops. They're so big and so cheerful looking. So I called the book Consider the Sunflowers, for the sunflowers of Kamloops. And in the novel, they are a symbol of durability and cheerfulness in the face of adversity. When I was growing up, I loved hearing the stories that my Mennonite relatives told. They had come from Russia. They were Dutch-German Mennonites, but they had come from Russia, and they had a lot of stories to tell. And I based the story on those tales that they had to tell, and on my own experiences too of growing up on the prairies. How did I research the novel? Part of it came from my own memories. I have a tremendously clear memory of growing up in the 1940s on the Saskatchewan prairie, and I based it on those memories. But those weren't enough, because those are memories of a child. I had to have adult viewpoints as well. So I interviewed a number of people about what life was like there at that time, including my parents, of course, and other relatives. And I also consulted published sources, books, and internet sources and that kind of thing. Who would enjoy reading Consider the Sunflowers? Women especially, I think. Women who are interested in relationships, as most women are. People who are interested in history, Canadian history, the history of Saskatchewan in the 1940s, the history of the war, what life was like on the home front during the war, and of course Mennonites, because the book is really based on Mennonites. Almost all the characters are Mennonites, although there are Scandinavians in it too. I grew up with Scandinavians in my small town in Saskatchewan, in that small area. There were quite a few Scandinavians, and they had an influence on us, and we interacted with them. Also British people we had there, and so it appeals generally not only to Mennonites but to people of different backgrounds. The novel can be ordered from Borealis Press in Ottawa. They're online. It can also be ordered from Chapters Indigo online, and some stores, some of the Chapters stores have it as well, some other stores. You can ask for it in a store or in a library. My name is Elma Schemenauer. I was born Elma Martins, and I grew up on the prairies in Saskatchewan. When I was about 8 years old, I wrote a poem about spring, and I put it on a piece of paper like this. I rolled it up like a scroll, and I threw it in a bottle, put the lid on, and threw it into a pond on my parents' farm, hoping that somebody would find it and somebody would be inspired and entertained by it. And I think that's when I first decided that I wanted to be a writer. We didn't have a lot of mentors as far as being a writer goes when I was growing up on the prairies. We had teachers, nurses, people who worked in the store, people like that, but I didn't know any writers. I didn't know how they went about things. I didn't know how they learned to be writers. So I became a teacher because I thought, well, that's a practical thing to do. And after I taught for a few years, I decided I really, really did want to be a writer. So I moved to Toronto, and that was a very big step for someone like me from the country, really. I had never lived in a big city like that. I hadn't even seen a big city like Toronto. But I moved there and tried to get a job in the publishing industry because I knew that was where most of the publishing went on in Canada. And I was unemployed for a while, which was quite scary. Finally, I got a job working for the Canadian Chartered Accountant. It was a magazine, and I enjoyed that, but it wasn't the kind of writing, or it wasn't the kind of publishing I wanted to be involved in. It wasn't something I was really interested in. So I kept trying. Finally, I got a job with an educational publisher, and there I was delighted to discover that I was not only asked to edit, but also to write. And that's when I first started really writing, and I just loved it. It was my kind of thing. I would say it's not as easy to write as you might think. You have to work at it, unless you're a rank genius, which some people are. I would say just keep at it. If you're interested in it, if you're committed to it, keep at it. Don't get discouraged. Listen to other people when they give feedback on your writing. This could be other authors, it could be editors, people in a critique group. Listen to them. Don't be too proud to listen to them, and try to improve by doing that, and keep smiling. Don't give up. Don't let it take over your whole life so that it becomes a burden to you and that you get really worried about not being able to achieve what you want to achieve. Make it part of your life, but keep trying. I'm working on a book about Canadian history. It will be Tales of Mystery and Adventure. These will be all based on Canadian history. I'm really excited about that book. And another thing I'm doing is I'm writing another novel. My novel, Consider the Sunflowers, was published October 2014. And now I'm working on one that comes after it. It's not really a sequel, but it features some of the same characters as I introduced in Consider the Sunflowers.